Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. And if you're here, you already know why you're here. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. Today, we're going to be covering, as I said in the last video, uh, the weekly World Cup recaps. So, this video right here, we're going to be doing for week 2, which happened last week. And you already know who I'm with, our favorite friend and co host, Nano Blaster. Nano, say
Yes,
some words
sir,
to the people.
man. What's good, people? Back with week two's recap. We know people been waiting for it, but we here to give y'all what y'all wanted.
Exactly. Pull up a seat because we're about to eat. And for the first race we got in, we're going straight to the topics. First race we had Brazil versus the United Nations. So we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the truth. And I'm going to let my guy Nano start us off here.
Okay, Brazil versus United Nations, man.
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, okay, so this this is one of those matches where there's not really too much to talk about because honestly, Brazil put on the hurt versus United Nations. Um, I know last week or during week one when Brazil was going against I forgot what team they went against during week one,
Brazil,
but yeah.
it was Belgium.
Okay, so when they went against Belgium, I know that so during week one when they went against Belgium, it was they were doing good the first half and then Belgium started, turning the tables during the second half and they ended up edging Belgium.
I would even say
And
the half. I would say after the third race, Belgium was picking it up.
that's true, man. That's true. And I think, and one of the things that I said about that race was that even though Brazil ended up winning, one of their flaws is that it looked like they weren't, they were still like new to the tournament setting and they
Yeah,
were using up all of their good picks first. And then when they started getting to the later stages, they were running out of, you know, they were running out of the good picks. And I think it ended up coming to bite them in the butt, but luckily they survived. Now, this time it's like they came 100% prepared, man. They said we're not doing that no more and I'm not gonna lie, man. They took over United Nations, man. Like
yeah.
it's like Brazil. They came with a plan. They they executed. And United Nations is crazy because United Nations went against Sammy's team, Team Canada, during week one,
They
and they
did.
didn't do they didn't do that bad versus Team Canada. But this week or during week two, it's like they look like a whole nother team out there, man. So,
I mean, it
you
could be
know,
possible because I do remember Haydef and Hitsiaga in our races in week one, but I'm not sure if Warner and Pinocchio were also there racing in week one because remember week one they had a sub. I think Haydef was running with a sub,
okay.
and this week they have no subs at all. I don't know if that could be a factor in why they didn't play so well, but like again, Brazil is a very prepared team because, as we said in the last video, Brazil was one of the teams that had like all the stats on different races and where they would do the best, and they were just picking races off of that. And no other team was really going above and beyond like that, apart from just going into practice. So
Yep.
Brazil was out there really researching and doing their due diligence, and it looks like it's paid off against the UN. Like granted, like Nano said, Team Canada, my team, we did race the UN, and they were strong. Even though I had faltered in a few races to let them come back, they were still a strong team. They were no slouch. A couple of races, like they were really giving Crusher and Reach a problem, and those two I want to say are the better races on our team. So the fact that this week, or last week I should say, because this is week 3 now, we have Brazil just decimate the UN is crazy.
Yeah. If I had to say like the good for this uh for Brazil versus United
UN,
Nations, I would say yeah. I would say that Brazil basically came with a game plan
yup.
and they performed how they wanted their team to perform. They performed as a unit and they went crazy. Um
Honestly, to piggyback on that,
mhm.
it honestly looked like Brazil had this whole race series in control from the very first race. Like it didn't look like they
Yeah,
had no pressure at all. And granted, like we just said, the United Nations is no slouch.
they're really
They're
not.
one of the better teams in Group B. So the fact that they can do that to the United Nations is impressive to say the least.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree wholeheartedly. If I were to say the bad, it would probably have to be that Team United Nations, you know, they look like a completely different team from week one
Yeah,
and they didn't perform as, expectations would see fit. Unfortunately, because they lost in week two, now they're down 0-2 and they're in a very,
tough spot
you know, yes. So they're gonna have to grind that much harder
just to
to,
secure a top
you
four
know,
spot.
like you definitely don't want to be a 0-2 team going
No,
into
no,
week
no.
three because at that point you're playing with your life.
And this is for any team that lost in week 1. This was the
Hmm.
week 2, where you should have really dug deep and clawed your way back to at least get a win here to have an even out score in 1-1, because at that point you put yourself in a better position to qualify for that last spot. But when you allow teams to go up 2-0 in your group stage, you're pretty much letting them know that, yeah, you guys get the free ride to the knockout stage, and we'll just fight whoever is left down here. We'll fight the scraps for the last spot, which is not good to really bank it on that. I'm not saying any team's doing that who's lost twice now, but you don't want to lose 2 times in a row and have other teams qualify without having to really break a sweat, if that makes sense.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, do you have? I mean, did you say you're good and bad for the teams, or would you just agree with what I
No,
said?
I agree with you 100%. We both watched this
Okay,
game,
okay.
and from start to finish, it didn't even look like a contest. And you know what's crazy? We were salivating over the fact that France beat Spain by over 100 points, and this game looked like the more impressive game. Brazil looked like they could have beat the UN by over 100 points.
Yeah, I agree. I think this looks just as impressive as the France deficit versus Spain because I think UN is a stronger team than Spain is.
Exactly. And to make the UN look like they had no business being in this competition is kind of wild.
Hmm. So if I were to say a truth, the truth for this match is that Brazil showed they're here for the long haul, man. They're not going anywhere and they're gonna be a force to be reckoned with, man. I
Yep.
think preparation is their strong suit. So, you know, that's definitely gonna be some teams got to deal with in the future. in the United Nations. Um, they gotta start to get things together because can't afford any more L's. Honestly,
No, at this point they gotta look to win every week that they got left because it's anyone's game in the bottom three in Group B because everyone's tied up with two losses or two wins. So
yep,
if you're in the bottom three in any group and you can't find yourself getting at least a win this week, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but you're more than likely probably not going to qualify for the group for the knockout stages.
yeah, and man, it's looking like after week 2, man, it might be curtains for a couple teams. I mean,
Yep.
we'll see.
We
We'll
already
see.
had one team qualify this week for week 3. We won't talk about that because that's for the next video, but just
Mhm.
so you know, got to be on your P's and Q's.
Definitely, no doubt, man. So, what we got for the next matchup?
Before we move on, I just want to give a quick shout out to Rugal and Nunn from the Brazilian team because
Yep,
these two were the biggest standouts. They're the main reason why their team did so well because both of them put up pretty much 50 apiece. And like we said in the last video when we was talking about France, man, when you got three guys that can put up 50, that's a problem. So you know
it is,
why
man.
Brazil really was in their bag this week because they had two racers on that team really just dominating. Like if
Yep.
we look at Team United Nations, their best player was Hitsuyaga, and he could even crack 40 points. He was
Hmm.
if he was on Team Brazil, he would have been their worst performing player, which is Wolf with 39 points. And Wolf 39 points is even bad. That's actually good.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing, man.
So if your best player is matching up with their worst player, you already know your team's in some trouble. And we got another situation like that that we're going to be talking about, but we're going to hold off on that for now. So our next race that we got here is Europe versus Peru. Ooh, this one. Man. I'll let you start off with this one.
All right, man. So off the rip, man. I'm just gonna go ahead and basically combine the good and the bad because the good is that Europe came and they looked like the number one team against this team. Like they came and it was just pure destruction. Like if you thought Brazil versus UN was crazy, this one was a massacre. And in terms of the bad, it's kind of Peru's fault in a way because
Yep.
I have not seen this yet, and I was not expecting this to happen, given how big this tournament is. But Peru actually only raced with 3 players for the first half of the races, and unfortunately, for every race that you're missing a player, you instantly take the last spot, which is gonna hurt a lot. And you know, to have that happen, especially going against one of the strongest teams in the tournament,
You should have
you're
just
asking for
disqualified
trouble
at
at
that
that
point.
point. Yeah, man. Yeah. Might as well should just DC. Like,
Yeah.
you should have just
Just
banned yourself from the tournament. Like,
just bowed out of the
it's
race because this one's up. Like mathematically, how do you even compete at that point? Like at the very best, you'd have to have the three remaining players on your team get the top three spots only. And even then, like it's no guarantee you'll still win
hmm
because if there's just the three of you, you have no sub. If one of you guys gets tired or one of you guys perform poorly in one race and you need a break, you can't get a break because you don't have a sub. If you had a sub, you would have been playing with four racers. So
You know what's so crazy is I was when I was watching a match before it started, only Slifer was there. So literally he had to we had to wait for his team to pop up one by one. Like we literally thought only Slifer was gonna be racing.
that is
And
crazy,
you know, he said he tried to hit up the team and he nobody was responding. So
man.
fortunately two ended up showing up, but I mean, it's a four-man race, man. You can't
Exactly.
need your fourth, man. And I
Unfortunate
know,
as that is, honestly,
hmm
it's just so unprofessional to put your team captain in that position. And also on top of that, everyone's coming to bring their A game, their best possible game. So everyone wants to race each team at their best. And when you can't even give the opposing side their best, it's almost a slight or a slap in the face. Yes, we see Europe dominate this race, but I don't know if they would have dominated in this fashion, even if they had the four players. But you also do Europe an injustice because they came prepared, but you didn't. You didn't take this
hmm
seriously, but they did. Everyone in this tournament is trying to take this serious as best as they can because we're not just fighting for who's the best racer here or uh how many followers we're gonna get on our platforms, but we're racing for a team here, and the team we're racing for is the country that we live in. So it's also a race of pride. So if you're gonna do that for Peru, if you're not gonna show up or you're gonna show up late and you're racing for your team, your country, it's like where's the pride for your country? Where's the spirit? Do you not care?
yeah,
Not
I
saying they
agree,
don't,
man.
but it just puts a sour taste in my mouth.
I understand. Granted, you know,
Things do
life
happen.
happens.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know exactly why what happened. So we can't really go all the way in too much. But you know,
No.
it's definitely like I'd imagine if you're the captain for that team,
Yeah, you're shaking your
and
head
even for
wondering
the people
what's
that
going
showed
on.
up, that was kind of disheartening, especially after getting a L on week one.
One
So for that to happen on week two, you know, it's definitely not the way you want to go going into week three. You know,
is
so
honestly Peru's not really looking promising for the rest of this tournament based on what we've seen the last 2 weeks at this point.
this is true. This
Be-
is true. But
because I
hey,
want to
you know,
say if this had happened in week one, we could say, okay, it's the week. This is the first week. People are still getting acclimated with each other. They're gonna bounce back because they're gonna have their stuff together for week two. But this happened in reverse. They showed up in week one and lost, and they came in week two unprepared and didn't even show up, and they got beat even worse. So as
mm,
anyone who's watching the World Cup right now, who's really gonna put their faith in Peru for week three, four, and five?
yeah, I mean, it's at this point it's really hard to, but you know, there's still more races to come, so
Definitely.
can't really. You don't want to. This is not the time to just bow out and give up. So
Yeah, it's still early
you know,
days.
you know, I know I made my little jokes about you might as well fan yourself in the tournament, but now we still want to see Peru. It's not all the way over.
Yeah,
You know, they still got a chance.
as I said in the first video, I was like, it sucked what happened to Peru in the previous tournament we were all enrolled in, and the fact that they got a second chance almost to come and be in this tournament with everyone else. I was excited. I told you I was excited to see Peru and what they were gonna do, and for them to be performing or not even performing and giving us this is it almost sucks because like they were my underdog favorites going into this tournament.
hmm
Like I was a fan of this
Yeah.
team before anyone else was.
You know, it kind of sucks though because it almost the self-inflicting wound that happened with Peru almost feels like it overshadows Europe's win over them.
Yes. And that is why I say it's very disheartening for your opponents to go through something like this because, granted, a lot of teams during the draw said Group A was strong because of the teams that were in there. But then it's almost like, okay, when you say that, you kind of take away teams' worth because now it's like, okay, why are they strong? What is it that they've done to show that they're strong? And you, even though you have Europe beat Peru in this fashion, it's like, yeah, but Peru was already, or Europe was already given a handicap to win this one. So it's like, are they really strong, or was it because Peru just didn't show up full force? Granted, me and you might know the reason why Europe's that strong, but to everyone else who's just watching or tuning into the first ever competitive side of Disney Speedstorm, they're gonna be like, I'm not too sure. I really gotta see it before I believe it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Um, if I were to say like the truth for this particular matchup for week 2, I would just say Europe showed dominance as expected for their team, and Peru they gotta get things together just like United Nations, if not even more than United Nations, because
They're in a
of the
bigger
mishap
hole.
that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. They are. So, you know, but that's all I got for that team. If you want to say any like call outs or shout outs for any people
Most
for this
definitely.
race.
So actually, the first shout out I'm gonna give to this race is the team captain from Peru, which is Slight Drago, right?
Slight fear.
Yeah. So I want to give a shout out to him because, like Nano said, he was trying to get a hold of his teammates before the race even happened, and during the race that that was occurring, clearly there was no real race, but it still happened. And fortunately enough, he at least had two members show up, which was nice, but just wasn't enough. And the fact that they stuck it out, the three racers, I commend them and I applaud them because it's not easy. I honestly, if Canada was in that position, I would have just told whoever was with me, is like, there's no point in racing. We're just gonna have to forfeit for the week. But the fact that Peru stuck with it, even though I said it looked like they didn't have any pride, that is showing some pride because, like, even though they knew that they had already lost mathematically at this point, they still said, no, we're going to give on a show because at the end of the day, we're racing for Peru. So you got to give them their credit where it's due. But ultimately, I do want to give a shout out to individual racers from Europe, but it's kind of hard when you almost had the deck stacked for you. But apart from that, I will give a shout out to Maxi because it was damn impressive that literally he won every race but one. He scored first place for every race but the second race where he came in third. And had he won this race, he would have had a perfect score in this race with 64. So, Maxi, if you're watching this, you definitely put on a lot of people on notice. So, be prepared for your next week, next match, because a lot of people are going to be tuning in or even trying to figure you out for when they have to race you. But
Hmm.
did you have anything to add to that?
Hey man, you're just showing why they gonna be one of the top teams to beat, and I cannot wait until my team comes across them.
Ooh,
So
that sounds spicy. Sounds spicy.
yeah, man, we trying to my team trying to win this whole thing, so we trying to be able to beat every team.
True.
Plus, I know it's also gonna be one of the hype matches to watch. So, you know, my team loves to put on a show, and I'm pretty sure going up against the EU, both teams will be trying their hardest to get the W on each other. So, it's gonna be exciting.
Definitely will be. I'm definitely going to be looking forward to that match. So the
Hmm?
next match we got is Benelux versus North America. So if you thought week one's match, Canada versus the United Nations, was a nail biter, I don't even know what you call this one.
Yeah, man. This this match was crazy, man.
From start
Like,
to finish.
okay, man. So if honestly, I'm not gonna lie, man. This match. So okay, so going. So week one, my team went against North America, right?
Yes.
And that was, that was one of the closer matches of the week. I believe he won by like 30 plus points or something like that. But NA was definitely, you know, adding pressure. Like they were no slouches. But we definitely could have lost the game had we not, practiced and were prepared.
Yep.
Um, and then they're a really strong team. But if you remember, as I was saying earlier, or in one of the previous videos, that I believe that Benelux is one of the top teams in the tournament.
Yes, you did say that.
So for them to make the game as close as it was, it actually shows a lot for NA. And even though NA lost, it really shows that for the other teams that are, you know, that are in the same position as NA, they really have to be careful when they run across NA because, you know, NA has lost to some of the strongest teams
Yep.
and not by a lot, might I add.
They easily
So,
could have been 2-0 going into week three.
yep, really could have, honestly, really could have. Um, if I were to say the good for this particular matchup is Belgium getting the W again. It wasn't as dominating as, ones might expect, but they did hold their own. NA is a strong team in their own right. So this is actually a really good W for Benelux.
It
Um,
is.
Hoodie showed his dominance. He won like almost every race, I believe. And I think that Hoodie winning all the races that he did literally saved Benelux from going 1-1 and getting their first loss.
I can agree with that.
hmm Because I think, as I said before, I believe Hoodie is probably one of the best racers in the game. And having players like that on your team, definitely, it's almost like you have like a weapon that's really hard to combat against. So even if your team might not perform well in certain races, you could always have your trust in this one player to carry you to the promised land.
Exactly.
And Hoodie did exactly that for this team.
I honestly want to say, like, oh, shout out to Skyliner because he's also one of the biggest YouTubers that cover Disney Speedstorm. But
hmm
also, um, like you said, Nano, if it wasn't for Hoodie, this really could have been ugly for Team Benelux because when I look across the spreadsheet here, there's not one person I see that really was giving Team North America a hard time in terms of positioning. It was really just Hoodie. Everyone else was
hmm
like in a constant influx up and down. It was very inconsistent on the point spread. It's like, yeah, you had May win like 2 races and come in second in another race, but then they were in the bottom 4 for majority of the races. And then
Yeah,
you have Doobie, who I don't know if he was a speedster that we didn't really perform.
Doobie
The speedster,
was the bra- he was the brawler. The person
damn,
before
May was the
was the
speedster.
speedster.
So
Yeah, so honestly, I actually think May did amazing for being the speedster.
the fact that May looking like they had a higher point total than Doobie, who's on a brawlers, is kind of crazy. When we all expect speedsters to be doing the worst in this tournament because that's how it's been so far. But May actually had the second most points on that team. Cedric and Elisi actually trailed just behind May.
Yeah, I know they Nelisi ended up subbing for
Subbing,
Cedric
yeah,
midway, so that could be another factor.
yeah, that did help.
But you know, I think
Toxic was really
you know,
holding it together for Team NA. So was Falcon. Um,
yo, they were going crazy, man.
I think what really screwed Team North America in really coming back in this race was them losing the way they did in race 5. 10 points is just way too much. You can get away with
Hmm.
losing against a team by 6, 5, whatever the case is, but 10 points, that's too much of a gap for you to have to cover in the next race. And it's not even that you can cover that. I mean, granted, yes, you can flip flop and have you outscore the other team by 10 the next race, but it's so hard, especially when the team has a gap like that. They're going to look to want to maintain the gap or widen the gap. So not only do you have to perform even better in the next race to try and close the gap, but you're also going to have to do the same thing for the race after that if you're behind in
Yep.
points. So they kind of put themselves in a tricky situation in race 5 because as we see here, race 1, they beat Benelux 20-16. Race 2 it flip-flopped. It was Benelux that beat North America 20-16. So it was tied at 36. And then again, they flip-flopped and then race 4 they flip-flopped again. And I believe by race 4, Team North America was up by like 2 points. Then going into race 5, you have Benelux just slaughtering Team North America to get that big lead of 8. And then from there, Benelux was just slowly and steadily keeping up with points with Team North America to make sure they ended up winning. Even though the race was so close at the end, if it wasn't for race 5, I think we'd see a different team, or we'd be talking about a different team winning this one.
Yeah. If I were to say, I agree with everything you said. I also, if I were to say the bad for this matchup,
Yeah,
it would have to be, I think, there's different factors why I think this team almost lost, like almost like pulled it off, but couldn't quite get it.
yeah,
I think a big factor, and I don't mean to call out my homie, but KH was playing the defender class, and if you look at the positionings,
yeah.
I believe that they KH had a couple of races where he didn't perform as hot, and
No,
being on the defender role, that's one of the roles where you need to be aiming for a
uh,
top spot for your
exactly.
team. And uh I think that hurt the overall performance of the team at the end of the day. And you know that it's like, because defender is such an important role because of how strong the class is.
Yeah,
Yes, it means you can perform good on a role and have a higher chance of beating other people, but that also means it weighs more on your team if you don't
perform bad.
play to your role.
Yeah,
Yes. So, I think that's actually one of the main reasons why. So it's like a combination of like Hoodie doing so good and KH not doing so good. So it's kind of like an opposite
Yeah,
on both spectrums.
I can agree with that because if you really think about it, defenders is like a freebie class in the sense where they're granted they're always gonna perform in the top spot because they're the best class in the game. Everyone knows that. So
Hmm.
in terms of which races or which players on your team that you want to take over classes, you're gonna want your best racers on your team that to be running the best classes. That way, you know you're granted to get a top spot every time with that class. Like, there's no ifs and buts on Team Canada that Crush is running defender. He's our best racer.
Yep.
Arguably, you could say me and Reach can flip flop between Brawler and Trickster, but I don't mind playing Brawler even though I'm a Trickster main. And it seems that Reach is a Trickster main herself. And if I can play both classes pretty decently, why would I put Reach in a bad position when her strongest class is the one class she can play? So
Hmm.
it really came down to me and Jack who was going to play Speedster. And through internal discussions, I ultimately had, I guess, the Brawler class. And I even opted to switch to the Speedster class to help Jack rack up some points because knowing me, I trust in my ability enough to say, okay, I don't think I'm going to come last place every time as a Speedster. So me thinking that way, I was like, okay, let me switch with Jack. But Crusher was like, nah, we need you on Brawler because even though Jack's coming in last place in every race, I don't think it's just because he's a speedster, right? It also has to come down to
Yep.
skill. So if we put ourselves in a disadvantage because I want to help my friend Jack out so he can help us perform better, granted, that's a nice way to think about it, but ultimately it doesn't help the team because now we're putting the team in a weird situation where if Jack can't perform with the brawler class, which is one of the better classes, then it screws us over in every race after because granted, Crusher and Reach is gonna have to perform out of their minds and get the top two spots every race. So mathematically, we could at least tie with the opposing team. And even then,
Hmm.
you don't even want to leave it to a tie because you don't know what's gonna happen if two teams tie.
Yep. Exactly, man. Uh, and just to show, when Benelux in North America, when they were so close in points, that one match that and they didn't perform well, know, put them in a hole that they couldn't get themselves out of. And
Yep,
even though they did good in the last race, I mean, by that point, it
it
didn't
was
matter because
exactly
the point differential was just too great
too
at that
much.
point.
It was really by race five that Benelux pulled it away because I believe by race five they were up eight, and then race six, NA had to keep it by I think it was I can't remember the score they needed to keep it by, but it was a certain number they had to keep it to mathematically be able to beat Benelux, and because they didn't have enough points, race seven and eight at that point didn't matter because technically Benelux had already won mathematically,
Hmm.
which is kind of crazy to think about because the end the score was so close, but the race had already been decided.
You know, I do. I know I just said what I said in terms of KH's contribution to his team
Yeah.
not getting the edge. I do want to say that he, I can also point to I can also point to the speedsters on NA's team because if you compare both of the speedster stats
Yep.
from Benelux's team
Yep.
and NA's team,
It's night and day.
Benelux's speedster put up some great points, 2 wins and a second
He
place.
was the fourth
That is
best player in that
huge.
entire race series.
Yeah, and when you have an A speedster pulling out points like that, and then you have an A speedster, you know, not getting. any wins or even any second places,
It does hurt.
you know. hmm And granted, like the speedsters, usually the speedsters like the slowest class, but during weeks two's map selection, there were quite a few maps that benefited the speedster class. So
I would agree with that.
when it comes to that, you're gonna want your speedster to outshine the other team's speedster. And fortunately for Benelux, May, you know, he decided that he wanted that title for himself, man, speedster of that matchup. So he ended up helping out the team along with Hoodie and playing an important role in getting the points they needed.
Most definitely. I have to agree on that. I mean, there's other things I was gonna pinpoint on, like the fact that in one of the races, it might have been Sonic who was Woody. He just really couldn't pull it out for his team on the jungle, the jungle track, and that also did not help them because I believe that was one of the races that they needed for him to help them get a deciding victory. But it's honestly came down to really, I guess, two racers from Team Benelux, which was Hoodie and May, because, like I said, Hoodie is probably one of the best racers in this tournament besides Maxi. And if you have a speedster who is finishing in the top four in total points, it's kind of scary because right now they're the weakest class in the game. So if you have a speedster performing that well for your team, what does that say about the other classes on their team?
hmm And I before this tournament, I actually didn't know who this player May was, but now I definitely got to keep an eye out for them.
Oh yeah,
Um,
most definitely.
if I were to say the truth for this matchup, it would definitely have to be, you know, Belgium. I mean, not Belgium. Benelux is definitely one of the teams that's trying to get the W over everybody.
Yep.
I said they were one of the best teams for a reason. They showed it. Uh, NA was a strong adversary. It's not like Benelux, even though the point differential was slim, they were going against a strong team in NA. And what Nalissi actually said something that caught my attention. He said if it wasn't for Hoodie, then this might have been North America's game.
Most
So,
definitely.
you know, you gotta give Hoodie a lot of credit because I feel like May doing as good as he did when it comes to like uh Doobie, like the other members of the team.
Yeah.
I think Doobie performed the least out of the team,
Yeah, he had
but
only
even
15
then,
points.
yeah, but even then, I feel like the team was mainly doing enough to keep themselves, competitive.
Yeah.
But Hoodie was the one that was like, "Yo, I'm gonna will our way to like get the W."
He was
Like the
definitely a
team was
safety
doing
net.
just enough. He was like the team was doing just enough to be in contention, but Hoodie was like, "Yo, like I'm gonna make sure we get the W, man." And you know, truth is, everybody needs a player like Hoodie on their team, man. But
Yep. Because in a race
not
that we're gonna
everybody
talk
got it,
about later,
man.
it was pretty much the same situation but a different outcome, which is crazy. So we're gonna
hmm
get into that soon. But
Yeah,
yeah,
man. Oh, do you want to? I mean, I know we kind of already talked about it, but do you want to do any player shout outs?
yeah. So for this race, most definitely, want to give a shout out to Hoodie. Like I said, arguably the best racer in this tournament besides Maxi. Maxi with the 62 points this week, Hoodie with 61. So you know they're neck and neck. And then May. this new racer that came out of nowhere. Apparently came from playing Mario Kart competitively for the last decade. Is on Benelux, so
Mm.
yeah, it really shows when he's playing a speedster class and he's performing this well.
No doubt.
And definitely, I want to give a shout out to NA because they didn't throw in the towel. And if you were watching it from the NA's perspective, their their comms was on point. They never gave up. They were
Hmm.
all cheerful, optimistic. They really made you believe they could still get this in the bag. And it showed because they only lost by, I want to say, 6 points, which was the closest race we had in this tournament so far.
Hmm. Yeah, man. Falcon and Toxic, they were playing out of their minds. Uh, they were. I'm not gonna lie, man. I know it must have been real intense because they were definitely trying to keep their team in the game,
Yep.
and I actually think they did an amazing job.
Yeah, they both did
Um,
solid.
yeah. If it, if I Sonic actually didn't do too bad either. Um, but I do, for those watching, this is actually a race that Skyliner was actually in. He was in two races, I believe, right? Was it two races?
Yeah, I believe so. I think he was in both castle races, if I was not mistaken. He was playing as Bell.
Nah, I think he was in one of the castles and he was in RB.
Okay.
Cause the castle race he used Bell and on Arby's he used Olaf.
Yes, yes,
Now,
yes, you're right.
I will admit I am not a big fan, or I was not a big fan of the Olaf pick because on a map like Arby's, Olaf. I mean, and this is just. I'm not really a fan of Olaf in general because it's just the nature of his ability. Like
Yeah,
he would just screw everybody behind him, and Skyliner he didn't really perform as well with the Olaf. I believe he got last on that match. But on the castle, he was actually in a top spot for a good portion. I
and
think he was holding down third place for a decent amount of
for the
time.
castle, I think he was in first place at one point. Like
Hmm.
Skyliner was really giving them work. I was like, wow.
He was, man. He was putting on for NA, and especially and from from my knowledge, Skyliner, this is his first time being in something competitive in Speedstorm.
Yes,
So for him to try to come out there and perform for his team against the type of competition he was going against, I salute him because
yeah,
honestly, if he was going against a different team, he could have easily grabbed, a couple top spots, man. But,
definitely.
you know, uh, Benelux is one of the stronger, more dangerous teams, but I still commend Skyliner for going out there and,
Putting
giving
on
it
the
his
show.
all.
Yeah,
Hmm. And I'm excited to see what NA is gonna do to prepare for their next one because I definitely think NA is still one of the stronger teams.
I definitely think they're gonna
So
bounce back.
yeah, I have faith they're gonna bounce back too because honestly, NA went against some strong teams in USA first week and Benelux the second week. So
Yep, they had a
I
strong
still feel like they
schedule.
got. Yeah, I still feel like they got a chance to make it to the knockout round.
Thanks for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe. I'll see you at the next one.